So can I share, Volker, can I ask a question to begin?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so actually it's a question that has been asked previously by yours in the context of Andy's presentation, but it applies to this as well, then possibly also to Volker. And it says, yours says, we also need better data sharing internationally, and can the Academy play a role in this?
Well, I would certainly say that certainly the academies can play a role. And with our activities, many academies worldwide are engaged now in the issue of food and nutrition security, for example, or for climate change and health. And certainly I would say if one needs information, one can get it. But we have working groups, in the different continents on these issues based on the activities of the academies in these areas, and they are certainly can be contacted, and they can certainly be asked, to participate. This is all possible, depending on what are the questions and what are the activities. But maybe Jos is in the position to define this question in a more detailed way.
Yes, thank you very much, Volker. Of course, I was also thinking about the Middle East. If you are a member of the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, which most countries want because it gives credit to your meteorological services, then you have to report data. But I was wondering, I'm not so familiar with the health data, if something like that is in place also with WHO, or because one of the issues we have in our region is that, people are not, sometimes they do not have data, but sometimes they have, but they don't share. And of course, it's also an effort to share data, so the data infrastructure plays a role here. But this is something that needs to be stimulated. So I was thinking also in particular from the point of view of the region. So I'm not sure how many academies there are in the Middle East that are also part of your.
Well, yeah, Jos, this is a very important and difficult question at the same time, because these academies, these are, let's say, white spots if we look at our map. And there are some academies, but they are under tremendous pressure, and they have really some difficulties, to operate. And so this is always, there we have strong academies in different regions of the world, but we have only weak ones. And if you see in the Middle East, is something which is not so easy. And as I noticed, I think we have not many speakers here from the Middle East. Is this correct, George? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct, Volker. And that's one of the problems that we were facing, that we don't have the channels of disseminating the efforts to the various countries. In the scientific community of the various countries, unless we go on an individual basis. So there's these mechanisms that exist in Europe through the academies and other bodies are more difficult in the area.
But this also applies to the political situation there. It's probably not so easy to contact the different ministries in order to get information. So we are trying always to help. We are trying to give them support, but there are certain countries in the Middle East where we so far failed, and something probably due to the present political situation. But you're right, Jos. It would be nice to not to give up. Let's put it this way: we should all have optimism, to achieve something.
Yeah. But I guess yours, you are not only referring to scientific data; you're referring also to health data coming from the different countries.
Yes, and I also believe that scientists can play an important role because they are willing to step over political differences. So this is something where academies can possibly play a role, even if a country does not have a national academy. There are ministries or organizations that can be involved on a scientific level where people talk to each other. And you're right, this is an additional difficulty in the Middle East, but I believe that, some impartial scientific organizations can play a role in bringing people together, and when people start talking, they start sharing data. So I would think that this is very important in the region to, actually there are some people that, use terms like science for peace and things like that. But this of course goes much beyond what we are discussing today. But I was just wondering, to what extent could we maybe make use of the current momentum to see if we can reach out into the Middle East more strongly on a scientific level.
Well, for example, we have good connection with the Jordanian Academy, and they are quite active. And maybe it would be possible, via such an academy to reach out in other neighboring countries and see whether one can, with personal contacts, get some information there, right? I think we have to play it in a more sophisticated way and see what is possible and not possible. But I can only advise you that Jordanian Academy is very cooperative and very helpful, and they may have contact, into other countries.
Thank you.
And there is another question. Oh yes, Robin, sorry.
So let me just add one point of question about data sharing, and yeah, clearly there are many challenges, perhaps particularly in this region. But let me just remind you there are also some great opportunities. There's one coming very soon, which is the WHO regional consultation for the Eastern Mediterranean, which I think is May the 23rd. Some of you may already be involved in that, but if you're not, I certainly think you should check it out to see the possibility of using that as a way to build contacts, to share information, to share data, and of course share knowledge about this initiative with WHO. I think that's one near-term opportunity. Jos, are you already involved in that?
Sorry, no, I am not actually.
I mean, we can share the details. I know Nina has a link. Probably she could put it on the chat. But it's May the 23rd, and there's an open invitation from the WHO regional office in this area.
Yeah, this is of course something of real concern to many of the countries that have similar problems in the Middle East. Health is certainly something that is high on the agenda in many countries. So we also noticed this with air pollution, like, there's a lot of dust in the region, and the awareness of these issues is growing, I would say. So maybe that's something else that we can make use of. Yeah. But yeah, if there is information, I would be very interested.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put the link up now.
So there is another question in the chat by Najat, which is actually very similar to the question I wanted to ask Robin. So there is definitely a chance to learn many lessons from the COVID pandemic, says Najat. One question is, how could scientists communicate among each other and among them and health organizations to confirm some controversies? For example, the time it took WHO and CDC to adopt that the main route of COVID transmission is airborne.
Okay. Well, clearly, I mean, I agree with the starting point that we can draw lessons from the pandemic, a number of different lessons. To some extent, of course, we're still in the process of drawing those lessons. Clearly, I think in many of our countries, it's also been obvious that scientific advice has taken a stronger role in advising action than has often been the case in the past. So certainly in Europe, a lot of the public health measures and political decisions have been informed by scientific advice. Of course, advice may not always be right. And clearly, we're learning the lessons for how best to aggregate the scientific advice and communicate it to policymakers and to the public. academies clearly have a role to play, and a number of our EASAC and IAP member academies have been very active at the national level in communicating about COVID to policymakers, to the public, and they've also acted jointly. So, for example, the IAP has published several communiques over the last year relating to issues for COVID, for example, vaccination, education, the nature of the importance of building coordinated research. I think myself, it's probably more difficult for most academies to intervene very quickly and specifically on particular controversies. I mean, it depends, you know, on the national system. In the UK, for example, we have a very reasonably well-established scientific advisory mechanism that's advising policymakers on COVID, and the academies feed into that. So they provide part of that scientific support to address controversies, to inform public health and other measures.
Okay, so shall we continue?
Well, I think we should probably, yeah. I mean, time is running, and I think you should go ahead, yeah.
Okay, so maybe I should take the introduction for the next speaker. Thank you very much, Robin. That was a great presentation.